does that look like on the rubber? So, if I'm right-handed, we want to be sure that with our shoe on, and I would practice this with your shoe off first, because you have to understand and be grounded and rooted into this position. That's why I'm barefoot. If you can do it barefoot and create floor pressure, then you really understand where your foot is in your shoe, and you can press into the shoe. You're not just searching for places. And a lot of times, that's one of the reasons this foot moves so much. We have no idea where we are in space because there's so much foam or rubber underneath our foot. So, I want to get into a position preferably where I can feel big toe, great toe, those 3 spots. If I can feel those spots, that means I can create the floor pressure needed. Now, our stance, we take that step back. Now, most mats are going to be cut off short here at the rubber, so after the rubber. So if you notice, my heel is elevated. It's going to stay elevated when I have a shortened mat, because what's going to happen is in most of the motions that we have when we rock back is going to cause this back leg, and I'll do it in this direction, is going to cause this back leg when we rock to extend. If this knee is in extension, I'm not going to have access to what? The floor pressure and the calf. Because even if I create floor pressure, I can't create floor pressure and push this leg back. I lose pressure in my foot, and most of you will lift, especially if there's this 1/2 inch difference. I see it all the time where the big toe comes off the ground. As soon as the big toe comes off the ground, you're going to lose access to be able to push through the superficial back line and get to your glutes in that back functional line. So we want to understand that, because it's one of the biggest reasons that if we don't produce force from this foot, we're going to throw and swing the leg out as opposed to drive out with both feet, which in our stance and in floor pressure creates the ability to drive with both feet. We have to understand that that's happening. So when I'm here, I find the position, big toe, great toe, floor pressure, here. I'm perfectly balanced here. I could be here all day. So, first thing I'm doing with this foot, the floor pressure, once it's down, I want to pull the floor towards me. I'm pulling the earth towards me. This turns on the hamstring even more. And we just talked about the harder the hamstring turns on, the more it's going to help the knee travel to an angle to be able to accelerate in this direction. The reason we want to change shin angles is because our knees are hinged joints. That means if I'm this way and I unhinge, I'm creating vertical energy. When I create that vertical energy, something has to change it. My hips push the vertical energy horizontally. Now, understanding Newton's laws of motion, we have to understand that the application of force through my hips has to be greater than the application of force vertical in order for me to change that vertical energy to being completely towards the catcher. That needs to be understood. Now, what we also have to understand is that I can manipulate where my knees are unhinging. That's what in sprinting we call creating great shin angles and power angles. If my shins, if you notice the back leg is already in a great position to where if the shin changes, it just gets deeper, meaning that I'm pushing forward. For most of us, when we do this motion and both knees extend, we're never going to get past this point with the knees, meaning a lot of the energy we're creating is still just vertical, and if we're not even using our hips to drive, you're getting mostly vertical energy. And so we have to understand that. We have to understand that from our stance. So our stance wants to create good shin angles. So when we're here, okay, what we want to do, instead of rocking back, we want to hinge at the hips. Hinging means that the hips get pushed backwards and there's very little change below. So if you notice this right here, and if it looks similar, it's like a kettlebell swing. That's what we're trying to provide. That's what's going to create explosive movement forward. So, as this foot pulls backwards, this back foot pushes forward. The reason I want that to happen is because as the hinge is created, when I drive the hips through, the hamstring and the foot travel the knee forward. What I mean by that is the pressure of me pushing backwards makes my knee travel forward. And we just talked about it shortly ago that I get to a point where the shin is so deep in that angle and the knee travels so far forward that I literally switch to my glutes and my quads operating in that pushing motion. So the front foot is always going through a pull and then a push, like that. The back foot, when we provide energy forward, is immediately being able to push. You're not going to go through a pull with your back leg. And if you are, this is going to happen. So we have to be very careful with this back foot, especially with those short rubbers. If you see yourself constantly hyperextending like this, it's going to be very hard for you to drive out. You're going to get kids who open early very often, and you're going to get swingers of this leg instead of being moving because of the energy provided by the leg and the hips. So once we're here, the hinge, I can be just right here. Okay, I'm pulling backwards. This muscle never turns off, excuse me. So what we want to do to practice this is do it in slow motion. Start upright. Notice what happens at my knees as I hinge backwards. Hinge forward, hinge backwards. My hamstring never turns off while that's happening, and I'm squeezing my glutes the whole time in order to help my body create and understand what should be happening every time I get ready to pitch. We do these repetitions like this so that we create facilitation, neurofacilitation, which is just like muscle memory, of our muscles always engaging in this manner. The more our brain understands that this should always happen, the more it's going to remodel itself and create a pattern to where you're not having to focus on it every time you're on the rubber. If you just notice, just naturally, my heel went below my toe. When that happens, the big toe's typically going to come off. As soon as the big toe comes off, we lose the arches, meaning we don't get the pull, meaning we lose the glutes. And that can't happen. That can't happen if we want to be able to create explosive movement forward. Okay? So, quick recap of floor pressure and stance. Stance starts with hip pointers down. Take your step. New changes and rules in the NCAA, so you're gonna get to even play even better with where are you most explosive. It's kind of really awesome in my opinion, because you're gonna be able to do a lot more and be in a lot better initial position to create the shin angles that would lead to the most optimal explosiveness and range of motion for you individually. Always remember, it's individual. Your levers are different lengths, meaning your bones. So you're gonna be at a little different degree range of motion than other people. Slightly different, so don't worry about that, okay? So take the stance, floor pressure, big toe, great toe here, pull back, right here, hinge, unhinge, hinge, unhinge. Now this will be one of the hardest things you've ever done because you're engaging so many muscles. And what we want the athlete to feel when we're going through stances and understanding how engagement happens in our stance is we want to be able to feel how pulling and driving the front foot backwards turns the hamstring on and makes the knee travel forward as long as the hips are engaged as that's happening. So just look at that front foot. okay? Now when I add the back leg, pressure forward, here, probably be even closer if I still gotta be attached to the rubber, okay? Squeezing the stomach, ribs down when we embrace and squeeze the core, pressure, hinge. When I hinge like this, now I can pull and I'm driving through, okay? We'll cover more on the continuation of that from the stance and start. Today was just about stance, start, creating floor pressure, and why it matters. You're gonna get several drills on how to work on this, so please do work on them. If you have any questions, as always, I'm yours. Foot Doctor Isaiah, this is step 1, floor pressure and stance for our load to launch series.